Hey, kia ora, Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from the Meteor Crater in Arizona, just west of Winslow. So I hope you're all having a super fantastic sparkling day. How was your Winning Wednesday? What wins are you celebrating today? For your mindset, we had passion, winning with passion, because when you are passionate about something, it's not work, it's not a chore, you just dig in and get it done. And so much stuff can come out of when you have passion, when you're following something that you have a true passion for. Basically nothing can stand in your way. What about your business? What celebrations did you have in your business? I'm celebrating the fact that for this month I am ahead of where I was last month, and my total volume is going up as well. Yay! Also celebrating the fact that I managed to make it through my first day on Pacific time. Well, in the Pacific time zone, technically I'm on mountain time, but since Arizona doesn't do daylight savings, they're actually on the same time zone as the Pacific time. So I actually made it through today, even though on this entire journey my laptop has stayed in Pacific time and all my entries, all my appointments I've made have been in Pacific time, and my phone has converted it to whatever time zone I'm in, which has been nice of my phone to do. So I've kind of been working in Pacific time, but then when I look at my clock and I go, okay, now I've got to add an hour to that, or I've got to subtract an hour to that, and all of that. And this is the first time since February that I've been in the same time zone and not had to convert anything, like looking up at the clock going, oh yeah, it's 4:37. I'm actually half an hour late. And then when I looked up at the clock before, I thought, oh yeah, it's 4 o'clock. I've got like 45 minutes before I need to be. It was like 4:15. I thought, oh, I've got 45 minutes till I have to do my Facebook Live, because I've been doing it at 5 o'clock for the last few weeks because I've been on Mountain Time. And then all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, oh no, you're working on Pacific time now. You're in the same time zone as your calendar and your laptop. I'm like, oh crud. So fortunately, I didn't miss any important meetings today. I was on time to all my trainings. I was on time to any other appointments that I had today. This was the only one I screwed up on. So I still call it a win, because I made it through my first day being in the same time zone as my laptop. Physically present in the same time zone as my laptop, not being in Mountain Time or Central Time or Eastern Time, and my laptop being stuck in Pacific. So that was a good win today. And then on your fun, what historical figure did you dress up as today? What historical figure did you learn about today? I mentioned this morning how I used to always either do Guy Fawkes or Florence Nightingale were my two people that I would do during elementary school, and we had to do 5 to 10 minute presentations. We had to do speeches in elementary school. Get that? And kids ago these days, we still had to do our book reviews and all of that sort of stuff and other presentations, but we actually had to go and research historical figures and do presentations on them all through elementary school. I think I was probably maybe about 7 when I had to do my first one. Maybe I was 6. We always had show and tell every morning, so everybody got up for show and tell every morning. Yeah, they got you speaking in public with no problem at all in school. Doesn't matter when you get out of school though. But yeah, we always had to do presentation. I don't think I did it when I was 5. We start school at 5 in New Zealand. I'm trying to remember if I did any presentations back then. It was either 6 or 7 when I did my very first presentation. We did show and tell, but I think actual formal presentation stuff, we started that probably when I was either 6 or 7. So either our second or third year of school, and we were doing it for just about every class ever since, all the way through high school. It was So in New Zealand we don't get shy of speaking in public, or we shouldn't be. But after all the presentations we had to do at school, I don't know if they've changed it over the years or not. But I know when I was in school we had to do presentations at least once a year. Sometimes it was 2 or 3 times a year, sometimes more. So we constantly had to do those. So I got my training done with my media makeover, hence I still have some of the glam look on because I didn't wipe any of the gook off the face. It was good. I got to do practice interviews. We're doing practice interviews today. So this whole media makeover thing is working out what our niche market is, and how to be interviewed and how to give an interview. So how to be the person asking the questions and how to be the person answering the questions. And also it talks about your back, and it's not just you, how you look, but also how your background looks as well, which is why you often see me sitting here in the corner, but this blind is usually closed. Because right now that's the only place in the RV that I can actually sit to do these, with the laptop at kind of the right level for my eyes and everything. Because my other space is, I mean, the entire RV is either windows or cupboards on a wall. There's no blank walls in this RV. I don't think, nope, no blank walls in this RV. Every wall either has a window, a cupboard, or some sort of monitoring device, fuse box, whatever on it. Every surface is used except for the windows. So I would sit in the corner here of my banquet, of my dinette, and this blind's usually closed, and I have my little light on my laptop, and that's my view. Although this blind is now broken, it doesn't go up anymore because the string broke. Actually, the little bobbin at the bottom broke. I could probably fix it because I have spare bobbins, but since I've got to use it, since this is where I sit to do my media makeover class, I'm thinking of doing what I've done over by my recliner. So let me turn this around so you can see my recliner. See, in the recliner I've got the burgundy curtain up there with the tension rod. So I'm thinking of doing the same thing behind me on this window, of putting a tension rod. I actually tried bringing that one over here, but the tension rod, even at its smallest, was too long. So I need to get a new tension rod and putting some dark color up here, like a purple, royal purple. Yeah, maybe I'll have different colors and change them out each week. Different dark, they've got to be dark colors because of the light that's on my face. With this light background, it washes all of this out. Yeah, and I get to put my sparkle. I'm going to need to get some new sparkly tops as well, so I can change up the sparkly tops, but make sure they coordinate with whatever my background is. So yeah, so it's learning all of that sort of stuff, the techniques on how to sit, how to present yourself, hair, makeup, all that good stuff. So, and then of course it got hot again today. The hottest it got to was like 96, but it said it felt like it was 100. But both weather apps said it feels like it's 105 outside, and I was like, yeah, we're not going outside. I mean, I brought the fan from the bedroom out here and put it down on the floor so it would swivel around on the floor. For Zeffy, I've got my hair, you can see my hair blowing. That's my little tabletop fan that clips to my table. And then I've got the one on the floor there that's usually in the bedroom, but I brought it out here so it would move the air around, so Zeffy's not. But Zeffy has spent basically her entire day in her crate, and I went over there and I thought, isn't it getting hot in there? And I put my hand in there and went, man, can I come in there too? It was like a cool little cave in there. And oh yeah, she's back in there again. She came out when I got up. As soon as I get up, she's like, what are you doing? You doing food? You getting lunch? Can I have some? You know, she's there. She's so funny. And like I was eating eggs this morning for breakfast, and she comes up and she puts her nose right here and starts sniffing. So I just go, and she's like, and licking her chops, and like leans back and licks her chops. Like, can I have some? And then she looks down at your plate, looks back up at me again, please. I'm like, no. So her stomach's still a little upset, but we're still good. But this afternoon, so the genealogy thing I wanted to talk about this afternoon is. This is one that comes up often. It's a question that comes up often about finding your female ancestors, because a lot of record keeping didn't include female ancestors. So what was really cool is I happened to stumble across this. I swear, I didn't know it was planned or anything, but I happened to go to my notifications on Facebook, and it said Family Search was had just gone live. I thought, oh, I wonder what this is about. And so I got in there, and it was about finding your female ancestors, and they had these 4 women on there, which was interesting to start with. And so then one of them turned around, the one Wendy who was facilitating, she turned around and asked one of the women there. She says, "Now, what's so special about today in regards to women?" And I'm like, "Okay, what happened on?" She's, what happened on this day in history? And I'm like, "Oh, what did happen?" So it was 100 years ago today, the 26th of August, that the 19th Amendment guaranteeing, I'm reading this off the screen, guaranteeing women the right to vote was formally adopted into the US Constitution by proclamation of Secretary of State Bainbridge Colby. 100 years ago today. Now, some states had already granted women the right to vote, but this was, like I said, formally adopted today. It was actually signed on the 18th of August, 1920, but on today, the 26th of August 1920, they actually adopted it to give all women in America. It actually stated the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. And Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So that was on this day in 1920 that was formally adopted into the Constitution. And this had been a 70-year battle with women suffragettes. And I know it was going on all around the world, because I know in, 1893, I think it was 1893, New Zealand was the first self-governing country to award women the vote in the world. And then other countries came on board, but it wasn't until 1920 that the whole of the United States came on board with that for giving women the right to vote. So on some things you can find women's names on the electoral rolls, but how do you find your female ancestors? Because as you know, if you're looking back through ancestry and stuff, the woman very often, like 99% of the time, would take their husband's name when they got married. So what was their name beforehand? How did you find them before that? Or how did you find out who the wife was? Well, there's birth certificates birth certificates quite often have on there the mother's maiden name. But some states here in the US and some countries didn't have official birth certificates until like the early 1900s. So what do you do about those that were before that? So this was actually a really good topic, and I had to break off halfway through it because I had to go do my accountability call for the week. But I will go back and watch the replay, but this is what I got out of it so far. So today was a 100 years celebration of women in the whole of the US being actually able to vote for the president. Not much was written about women over the years. I mean, and one of the women even noted that even in obituaries, if it was the obituary for the wife, it was more about what the husband did than it was about his wife's passing. And then and they said, in the European, taking the husband's name was the thing that came over from there. They said that even post 1950, newspapers, especially society news. Remember, I talk about newspapers.com quite often and how it's like a big gossip magazine. And they turn around and tell you who's been going on vacation, where did they go, who did they visit, or who had somebody come in from out of town to visit them. They had a party, who was in attendance. They had this society meeting, that society meeting. These are the people that were in attendance. And it wasn't whether you were high in society, it was a community news. So it wasn't society news as in a higher society or higher class society. It was just society news as in the community news as to what was going on and everything. So they said that was a good source to find your female ancestors. Societies and associations that were around during that time as well. All the community news things were there. And that's that's post 1850, because 1850 is when women started first appearing on the census records, when the census records in the US started recording everybody that was in the house by name. Prior to that, you didn't get that. In pre-1850, they said court records are your most common records for finding women, but they said well-behaved women never made the news. So if you can't find much about your female ancestors here in the States, it's maybe because they were well-behaved. They also had a dower rate which guaranteed women a third of the husband's property upon his death. And that was just for them to live on, to sustain them for the rest of their days and all that. That's if the wife outlived the husband. And so in that case, you're coming across probate records and land records and any other court records that were related to the husband's death. And then they had a woman on there who was actually from Hawaii, and her father was Japanese, or of Japanese descent. Japanese. And she was actually named after her second great-grandmother. She actually has her second great-grandmother's last name as her first name. So it was interesting to hear the story behind that, and then how her father, when her mum was pregnant with her, the father turned around and said, if it's a girl, you're going to call her this. And then the middle name was actually his sister's first name. So I thought that was kind of cool how they kept that family alive. But she's talking about the Polynesian cultures, because she does a lot of the Polynesian Oceania things, and a lot of it was oral genealogy, where they don't have dates and times. Or, as she said, like in mythology, you go in the time of Maui or in the time of Kona. and that so you fix it to a time period, but not an actual time. So she said the stories were, it's more important. The family names were more important than the dates. So you would get these oral genealogies passed down just by people's names, not necessarily their dates and things. So it was a very interesting call, and like I said, I've got to go back and listen to it again. But some of them were giving resources, and then just as they were about to talk about the most interesting female ancestor that they came across in their own personal genealogy, that's when I had to leave to go do my call. So I'm going to go back and watch it. But Miyamoto, who was the one who was named after her second great grandmother, she told us this really interesting story about the different perspective between ancient Oceania and the Western perspective. You've got to look at the different cultures and the stories and the time periods and things, not just look at it from your culture. You've got to look at it from their culture. But she said one thing that she was always told was the past is in front of us and the future is behind us. And I was like, well, that's an interesting concept. And then she went on to explain it. She says, when it has happened, it is in front of us clearly where we can see it. The future is behind us because we cannot see it yet. And I thought, I've never thought of it that way. And it's behind us where it can't be seen because we can't see into the future. And then she says that, but as you move into the past, your ancestors from the past will navigate you into the future with what is coming because they can see. And when you are in the present, she says, in the present we are the embodiment of our ancestors who, while inside us, are also in front of us, guiding us towards the future. Oh, that is I thought that was so cool to have our ancestors. Well, not only are we the embodiment of our ancestors, so this is why research in genealogy is one of the reasons I love doing it, is because it's finding out who am I? Who made me? Because yes, I get 50% of my DNA from my mum, 50% from my dad, but what about all the other ones? What about the grandparents? What traits did I inherit from them? What traits did I inherit from my great-grand? And if you think as you're going down, DNA is passed down through generation after generation after generation, which is why they can do these DNA tests now that will tell you where your country of origins are from, where your ancestors came from because of the type of DNA that they have. And I'm like, I am the embodiment of all of my ancestors who came from England, Cornwall, Scotland, Ireland, and now 2% Scandinavia. And there's always been a rumor that the Eakins name actually originated in Scandinavia, and now we've got a 2% of Scandinavia showing up in the DNA testing that was done, because they update the more records, the more DNA testing they do, the more fine tuning they can do on the testing, and the bigger database that they can pull from, the better the more accurate the results become. So I've gone from being 75% English and Cornish and 25% Scottish and Irish to having a 2% Scandinavian thing added in there. So, what traits have come down through those generations that I now have, and finding out who these ancestors are. I've got a lot of farmers in my background, in my ancestry. Even in New Zealand, there's a lot of an ancestry and stuff like that as well. I've got bookbinders in there. I've got a gunsmith in my ancestry. Got a lot of military in my ancestry, a lot of people in service and stuff. Who else do I have in my ancestry? I've got seamstresses in my ancestry. So I know where my love for crafts come from, because I have these women, these beautiful women who did all these beautiful sewing and took in sewing jobs and stuff. So it's so much fun discovering, what trades, what professions or occupations did your ancestors have, because it can explain some about who you are. So that's a good thing. And so listening to this thing today about how to search for your female ancestry was very interesting, because we had somebody from Canada, somebody from the US, and somebody who was in the US but is Hawaiian Japanese descent, so has that Japanese and Polynesian descent. So very interesting perspectives on where they can go to look for records and stuff, and they gave us a lot of resources, which is another reason I want to go back, because I want to get down all the websites and stuff that they were giving out during that time on different places to go and research. But it was very interesting learning how to find your female ancestors, and now I'm kind of curious to go back. And I know that some of my ancestors had some great struggles. I know they did. I'm just thinking, my second great grandmother came out from England with how old was my great grandfather? He was 5, I think. So she came out on a ship by herself from England with her 5-year-old son and her stepdaughter, because my second great grandfather had been married before, and his first wife had passed away, and then he got married to my second great grandmother, and so she came out with her stepdaughter and a 5-year-old. Can you imagine being stuck on a ship with all these people for that time? And those ships aren't as big as the cruise ships we have today. I mean, it's just like, what on earth drove her to do that? Asking these questions, and then seeing some of the struggles. I've got a second great grandmother who was whose husband drowned. She had two young daughters, and she was pregnant with their 3rd child when he was drowned, when my second great grandfather was drowned. And then the struggles that she had to go through. She actually gave that baby up for adoption, and raised her 2 daughters, and then later on had another 2 daughters and possibly a son. We're not sure about the son, whether it's hers or one of her kids, whether it's hers or if it was one of her, or it was a grandson that she raised as her son. We're not sure about that one. That's the mystery. But all the struggles and stuff that she went through that time, in that time period in New Zealand. And so it's, these great stories about these incredible women. And it's sort of like, it's up to us to go find these stories about our female ancestors, so we can make sure that their stories aren't lost and they get told they get passed on to future generations, so that they can turn around and see what a strong, especially the female line, can see what a strong female line they came from. So it's kind of interesting. That only makes up 50% of who I am, because the other 50% came from the male side of the family. So gotta keep things in perspective here, because I got some amazing men in my ancestors as well. Some incredible men who've been through some of them went through some amazing times, like the struggles that my grandfather went through during World War II that I didn't know about until not that long ago, actually, probably about 10-15 years ago. Well after he passed away, because he passed away in 1986. I want to say it was 86. I think it was 86 he passed away. Yeah. No. Yes, 86. I think he passed in 86. Yeah, that sounds about right. So he passed in 86. I didn't find out till about 10 or 15 years ago about some of the stories of what he went through during his time in World War II. Because he never talked about it. Whereas his wife, my grandmother, she would quite happily regale you with story after story after story of her time in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. And she didn't get to go overseas like my grandfather did to fight, but she fought here on the home front. She was a chef. And so I got some cool stories from her about that, and she would just tell story after story about her times during that time period while her husband was away fighting overseas, and what she had to do to keep the home fires burning back here. And she always boasted, this was one of her most proudest things, that she always boasted that my dad was the only male to ever play on the Women's Auxiliary Air Force hockey team. And this is field hockey, not ice hockey, field hockey. And I'm like, how? And turns out she was 8 to 9 months pregnant and the goalie for the team when she was 8 to 9 months pregnant with my dad, and she was the goalie for the team as she's out there playing field hockey for the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. So that was one of her most proudest moments, was that my dad was the only male to ever play on the Women's Auxiliary Air Force team. I'm like, 8 to 9 months pregnant on a hockey field? Do you know how hard those balls are? I mean, I used to play field hockey when I was in the Air Force. Yeah, those balls, man, they pack a punch. And then you got the sticks to worry about as well. And you're in the goalie with all those paddings, and she was there at 8 to 9 months pregnant at the time. Oh my gosh, that would never happen today. But, this was during World War II. What can you say? Anyway, that's it from me for now. I have to head off and do some other fun things. So have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we will catch you guys later on. In fact, we will catch you tomorrow morning for Thankful Thursday. He konera.